The trembling spoon paused midway to his lips. Unteroffizier Karl Hoffmann stared at the white liquid pooling in the metal bowl. Fresh milk. Real dairy. Not the chalky powder that had passed for nutrition since Africa. 2 years without tasting cream this pure. The sweetness coated his tongue. Everything the Wehrmacht had proclaimed about American shortages crumbled with that single sip. Hidden beneath his thin mattress lay pages that could earn him severe punishment. Words no Nazi officer should read. The enemy feeds prisoners better than the fatherland feeds its soldiers. June 4, 1943, Mexia, Texas. Beyond the mess hall glass, American sentries consumed thick sandwiches without concern. Meat stacked high between bread slices. In North Africa, his unit had survived on 300 grams of canned rations daily. Hard bread measuring 125 grams when supply lines functioned. Sometimes they captured British stores. Most days brought hunger. Yet here, in this nation supposedly weakened by racial mixing and democratic chaos, abundance appeared endless. 1,850 veterans of Rommel's legendary Desert Force entered the dining hall that morning. No field kitchen, with horse-drawn wagons dispensing watery soup. No sand-contaminated emergency rations. A complete dining facility hummed with electric refrigeration, steam tables, mechanical dishwashers. Each housing block connected to its own mess hall. Professional cooks, serving staff, real silverware, food quality beyond imagination. The entire population of Mexia had gathered to witness their arrival. Tanned, healthy enemy soldiers marching down Railroad Street under guard. None of those watching townspeople understood they were observing the beginning of the most complete psychological transformation in warfare history. Nazi racial doctrine would collapse not through military defeat alone. Daily confrontation with impossible prosperity would demolish their entire worldview. Mathematics of American agriculture arrived not in propaganda pamphlets but on loaded metal trays. Eggs, bacon strips, white bread with butter, real jam, coffee with cream. Their defeat in Tunisia had led to this moment of revelation. May 13, 1943 marked the end. General Jürgen von Arnim, commanding after Rommel's recall to Germany, surrendered with approximately 275,000 German and Italian troops. The Afrika Korps, which had pushed British forces to Cairo's gates, which had earned Montgomery's grudging respect, now marched into captivity. Among them walked Obergefreiter Franz Müller, Iron Cross recipient, veteran of Poland and France campaigns, 2 years surviving the North African desert. His detailed account, discovered decades later in National Archives, would provide historians with unprecedented documentation of German soldiers' nutritional shock under American captivity. Daily rations had consisted of 750 grams of bread, 150 grams of fat, 120 grams of sausage or tinned fish when supplies reached forward positions. More often, they survived on dates, captured enemy stores, or nothing at all. The journey from battlefield defeat to psychological revelation began in collection cages near Tunis. While Mueller and 30,000 other prisoners awaited transport ships, American logistics machinery was already destroying their preconceptions about enemy capabilities. The U.S. Army processed thousands of captives daily with organizational precision exceeding anything the Wehrmacht had achieved at maximum efficiency. Food delivered the initial psychological blow. Feldwebel Hans Klein, captured with 15th Panzer Division, wrote to his wife 6 months later from Camp McCain, Mississippi. At the Tunis cages, while awaiting ships, Americans provided white bread with meals. White bread. Throughout Africa, they had consumed nekkebrot when fortunate. Hard, crisp, whole wheat crackers. American guards ate more bread per meal than Klein's entire squad had seen weekly. Liberty ships carrying them across the Atlantic represented monuments to American industrial capacity. These vessels, produced at peak rates of 3 daily, returned from delivering European theater supplies. Prisoners typically sailed aboard empty Liberty ships returning home, with monthly arrivals reaching 30,000. Rather than expected cattle cars, they discovered shipholds modified for human transport. Proper ventilation, adequate lighting, sanitary facilities. The Atlantic crossing provided the second phase of culinary shock. Gefreiter Wilhelm Becker, of 21st Panzer Division, maintained a food diary surviving in family letters after repatriation. Breakfast consisted of oatmeal with sugar and milk, white bread with butter, coffee with cream, he documented on July 15th. Officer food in Germany reached common soldiers here. Even prisoners received such treatment. Shipboard meals amazed the Germans completely. American merchant sailors consumed steak, eggs, fresh vegetables, ice cream. Ice cream remained a luxury reserved for highest party officials in Germany. Ship waste contained more calories than entire German units received in daily rations. Lieutenant Heinrich Weber, whose Prussian military family had served Germany since Frederick the Great's time, later wrote in unpublished memoirs, "Approaching the American coast, I watched sailors disposing of barely touched meals. Complete dinners thrown overboard. I remembered my Africa men, grateful for a handful of dates and brackish water. I began understanding we had fought not just an enemy, but an entire civilization beyond our comprehension." August 2, 1943, Norfolk Naval Base, Virginia. The first American soil meal shattered remaining Nazi propaganda about American weakness completely. Arriving prisoners were amazed by comfortable railroad cars carrying them to prison camps. The country's vast size and undamaged prosperity stunned them. Nothing prepared them for awaiting bounty. Processing station meals defied belief. Fried chicken, mashed potatoes swimming in gravy, green beans, cornbread, apple pie, coffee with real sugar. Unteroffizier Johann Fischer, a Munich baker's son, calculated in his diary that this single meal contained more meat than his family's monthly German ration. Americans apologized that the meal was simple because we arrived unexpectedly, Fischer recorded. Apologized for food German generals would consider feasting. That moment revealed our delusion's depth. Train journeys from Norfolk to Texas and Oklahoma camps proved more destructive to Nazi ideology than military defeats. Rolling through Virginia, North Carolina, Tennessee, Arkansas, prisoners pressed faces against windows, witnessing America that couldn't exist according to Nazi doctrine. Every stop revealed American railroad workers consuming meat sandwiches, drinking Coca-Cola bottles, smoking cigarettes without rationing concerns. At Memphis, Tennessee, prisoners observed dining car provisioning. Beef sides, egg crates, potato sacks, fresh vegetable boxes. Quantities loaded for single trains exceeded what entire German divisions received monthly in Africa. Stabsgefreiter Rudolf Richter, a Westphalian agricultural inspector before conscription, documented observations. Food quantities transported daily on American railways could sustain all Germany. I witnessed freight cars filled with wheat, refrigerated cars carrying meat and milk, entire trains devoted to moving food from farms to cities. No military guards required. No special protection needed. Food flowed like rivers, constant and unstoppable. September 19, 1943, Camp Hearn, Texas. Permanent camp arrival provided the next cognitive demolition level through food. America attempted making POW life excellent for two reasons: ensuring good treatment for American prisoners abroad and winning German prisoner hearts who would return to rebuild post-war Europe. Mess halls exceeded anything most German soldiers experienced before the war. Electric refrigerators hummed constantly. Automated dishwashers cleaned thousands of plates. Steam tables maintained food warmth for hours. Industrial mixers kneaded dough for daily fresh bread. Geneva Convention guaranteed POWs food, clothing, medical care equal to their captors. At Camp Swift, Texas, Unteroffizier Karl Hoffman received kitchen duty assignment. His discoveries there would haunt him for decades. Today we disposed of 300 pounds of food, he wrote September 23rd. Not spoiled food, but excess from overproduction. American regulations require preparing 10% beyond needs, ensuring every prisoner receives full portions. Surplus gets discarded. Daily ration scales posted in kitchens read like fantasy literature. 3/4 pound of meat daily, 1 pound potatoes, ½ pound vegetables, 3/4 pound bread, plus sugar, coffee, milk, butter, eggs. Feeding prisoner costs were carefully managed by government. Farmers employing POWs paid 45 cents hourly per laborer, helping offset millions needed for the POW program. Feldwebel Hans Klein, now at Camp McCain, Mississippi, documented breakfast rations, oatmeal or cornflakes with milk and sugar, scrambled eggs, bacon, toast with butter and jam, coffee with cream. Lunch brought meat, always meat, with vegetables, potatoes or rice, bread and dessert. Dinner provided more meat, more vegetables, soup, bread, coffee. Sundays meant chicken or turkey with all traditional accompaniments. Prisoners discovered American military rations far exceeded German civilian provisions even before the war. German civilian rations had dropped to 2,078 calories in 1942-43, then 1,181 calories in 1943-44. Meanwhile, German POWs in American camps received over 3,000 calories daily. Camp Clinton, Mississippi, housing highest-ranking German officers, including 25 generals, presented even more remarkable food situations. General von Arnim, Rommel's replacement, lived in a house with furnished car and driver. Generals maintained personal cooks and could request special meals. They dined on steaks, roasted chickens, fresh fish and vegetables unavailable to German civilians since 1940. Even enlisted men's rations stunned prisoners completely. Obergefreiter Franz Müller wrote from Camp Shelby. Today's lunch featured fried catfish, caught fresh from Mississippi rivers, accompanying coleslaw, hush puppies being fried cornbread, green beans, and peach cobbler dessert. Negro soldiers serving us eat identical food. In Germany, we heard Americans starve their Negro populations. Another propaganda fabrication exposed. October 1943 arrived. German POWs began working American farms. What they witnessed there completed Nazi agricultural mythology's destruction. From 1943, when POWs arrived in large numbers, until war's end in 1945, prisoners in Texas picked peaches and citrus fruits, harvested rice, cut wood, baled hay, threshed grain, and gathered pecans. At a Huntsville, Texas dairy farm, Unteroffizier Ernst Wagner watched in disbelief as farmers dumped hundreds of gallons of milk because processing plants couldn't handle surplus production. He poured it on ground without concern, Wagner documented. Milk German mothers would beg for their children, used irrigating pastures. When I protested, the farmer explained simple excess production. Prices would collapse if everything reached market. Approximately 12,000 prisoners were held in Nebraska camps. They worked alongside farms, stacking hay and laboring in sugar beet fields. Gefreiter Paul Schmidt worked corn farms and documented observations. Farmers' chickens eat grain without restriction. Farm cats receive fresh milk daily. Dogs get meat scraps, sustaining German families for days. American farmers employing POW labor often invited them sharing meals. This violated no regulations with guards present. These farm kitchen meals delivered perhaps the most devastating psychological impacts. Farmers contracting POW workers usually provided meals, and these spreads overwhelmed prisoners completely. Fried chicken platters, mashed potato bowls swimming in butter, green beans cooked with ham, corn on cob dripping butter, biscuits with gravy, multiple pie varieties, cold milk pitchers, endless coffee. Christmas 1943. Holiday meals delivered psychological impacts from which many prisoners never recovered. Camp Hearn. Texas Christmas dinner menu read like impossible dreams. Roast turkey with stuffing, honey-glazed ham, mashed potatoes with giblet gravy, candied sweet potatoes, green beans, corn, cranberry sauce, fresh baked rolls with butter, mince pie, pumpkin pie, apple pie with ice cream, coffee, milk, apple cider. Feldwebel Hans Klein wrote from Camp McCain, "We ate until physically ill, not from bad food, but overwhelming quantities. Stomachs conditioned by years of inadequate rations couldn't process such amounts. Men wept while eating, remembering hungry families at home." Contrast with German rations remained stark. German POWs in German camps received 9 pounds of potatoes weekly, augmented by 5 pounds bread and 2.5 pounds cabbage, with small margarine amounts and ersatz coffee made from acorns. Meanwhile, German POWs in America experienced nutrition levels unknown since peacetime. March 1944 brought spring. Food situations in camps became even more remarkable. Fresh vegetables appeared daily: lettuce, tomatoes, cucumbers, radishes, carrots, celery, fruits that had been unimaginable luxuries in Germany. Oranges, grapefruit, bananas, seasonal strawberries. Variety alone overwhelmed men accustomed to monotonous military fare. Camp bakeries produced daily fresh bread, white bread, whole wheat, rye, whatever bakers chose. Prisoners working in bakeries reported using more flour in single days than German bakeries received monthly. Unteroffizier Johann Fischer, the baker's son, was assigned Camp Swift bakery duties. "We bake 500 loaves daily for our compound alone," he documented. "We make pastries, cakes, cookies for special occasions. Sugar we use for one day's desserts would supply German bakeries for months." Summer 1944 arrived. Normandy invasion on June 6th brought news that Germany now fought on 3 fronts. Yet food situations in American POW camps remained unchanged. If anything, they improved as more prisoners were assigned agricultural work and witnessed firsthand the sources of American prosperity. In Nebraska, prisoners working sugar beet fields discovered American farmers produced more sugar beets in single counties than several German provinces combined. At Arkansas canning factories, prisoners observed tons of perfectly edible peaches rejected for minor cosmetic blemishes. Meanwhile, at Fort Lewis, Washington State, different German POW groups experienced similar revelations. Among them was 18-year-old Günter Grabe, arriving August 1944 after Normandy capture. Standing before the camp canteen in August or September 1944, considering what to purchase first, ice cream or Coca-Cola bottle, he would later document, "The last ice cream I could buy in Germany was years ago, but Coca-Cola never before. So I decided taking both. I suddenly realized how extremely lucky I'd been to be captured by American Army and not Russian forces." September 1944 arrived. After more than 1 year in captivity, many German POWs had gained 20–30 pounds. Medical examinations showed improved health across all metrics: better teeth from regular milk consumption, stronger bones from adequate protein, clearer skin from vitamins and fresh vegetables and fruits. Dr. Friedrich Bauer, a German medical officer imprisoned at Camp Shelby, Mississippi, documented health transformations. Men arriving as prisoners were malnourished, many suffering scurvy, pellagra, and other deficiency diseases. After 1 year of American rations, they are healthier than ever before. Their physical transformation is remarkable. Psychological impacts went even deeper. Gefreiter Wilhelm Becker wrote observations. "We no longer speak of German victory. How can we defeat a nation feeding prisoners abundantly while waging war on multiple fronts? This resource level reveals insurmountable advantages." December 1944 brought the Battle of the Bulge, representing Germany's last major offensive. Yet in American POW camps, Christmas dinner 1944 exceeded even the previous year's feast. Turkey, ham, roast beef, all traditional accompaniments, plus special treats, fruitcake shipped from American bakeries, candy canes, chocolate, real chocolate, not ersatz variety made from turnips that had become German standard, nuts, and fresh fruit. At Camp Clinton, Mississippi, Italian POWs who had changed sides after Italy's surrender were allowed helping prepare special pasta dishes for Christmas. German POWs watched as their former allies, now cooperating with Americans, prepared food with ingredients olive oil, real cheese, white flour that had vanished from German tables years earlier. May 8, 1945. Victory in Europe Day. The war ended, but food revelations continued. German POWs learned that throughout the entire war, American civilians never faced serious food rationing. Meat had been limited, sugar and coffee restricted, but Americans never experienced true hunger. American agriculture's strategic depth had never been touched by war. In May 1945, the Office of the Provost Marshal General limited available food and ended canteen food sales. Civilians had complained prisoners were eating too well. Even with reduced rations, German POWs continued receiving more food than German civilians would see for years after war's end. Finally compiled statistics revealed undeniable truths. German POWs in America consumed average 3,200 calories per day. German soldiers in combat theoretically received 3,600 calories when supplies reached them, which was increasingly rare. German civilians by 1945 received fewer than 1,412 calories daily. American camps served approximately 3/4 pound of meat per prisoner daily. German weekly military rations included 120 grams of sausage or tinned fish when available. Contrast between American plenty and German scarcity had become the most powerful argument against Nazi ideology. Not through words, but daily experience. Summer 1945 arrived. As German prisoners of war prepared for repatriation, many begged to remain in America. They had witnessed an agricultural system transforming their understanding of what was possible. Hans Becker, a POW at Fort Robinson, Nebraska, later recalled life in camps was vast improvement for many of us who had grown up in cold water flats in Germany. We discovered running water, central heating, and abundant food. Our treatment was excellent. The re-education program achieved greatest success through meals rather than lectures. Each day, German prisoners confronted evidence contradicting Nazi teachings about American weakness. Every satisfied appetite challenged their former beliefs about racial superiority and democratic inefficiency. Dr. Walter Schreiber, former Wehrmacht colonel and agricultural economist, calculated after the war, food America provided to German prisoners could have sustained the entire German Sixth Army at Stalingrad. Their agricultural surplus would have fed all occupied Europe. We never understood we were fighting a nation that had solved the fundamental problem of human existence: how to feed everyone. Between 1945 and 1946, 371,683 German POWs were repatriated from American camps. They returned to Germany destroyed, divided, and starving. But they brought invaluable knowledge that prosperity was achievable, that societies could nourish all citizens, that democratic systems could produce abundance rather than chaos. Many former POWs became leaders in West Germany's agricultural revolution. Hans Müller, imprisoned at Camp Shelby, introduced American farming methods to Bavaria, increasing crop yields by 40% within 5 years. Wilhelm Fischer from Camp McCain helped establish food distribution networks based on American models. Friedrich Bauer advocated for nutritional standards he had observed in American prison camps. After repatriation, about 5,000 Germans emigrated to the United States, and thousands more would have come if permitted. They sought not just economic opportunity, but food security they had discovered as prisoners. October 1947. Fort Lewis, Washington. Among the last German POWs to be repatriated was Günter Grabe, who had spent 3 years as a prisoner. Decades later, he would return to America as a successful businessman. But he never forgot that moment at the camp canteen when he could choose between ice cream and Coca-Cola. Luxuries his family in Germany could only dream about. We always were treated with fairness, got sufficient food and 80 cents daily that gave us chance to buy cigarettes, chocolate, ice cream, and Coca-Cola, he would write 73 years later. Things my mother and sister in Germany could only dream of. 1985, Austin, Texas. At the 40th anniversary reunion of German POWs, over 500 former prisoners returned to America, many bringing families to show them where their transformation had begun. Former Unteroffizier Karl Hoffmann, now 78 years old and an American citizen since 1955, delivered a speech capturing the essence of their experience. We came to America as warriors of the Third Reich, convinced of our racial superiority, certain that American democracy was weak. We departed as witnesses to profound truth. America's strength came from agricultural productivity, not racial purity. Every meal in prison camps challenged our beliefs. Americans fed us, their enemies, better than Hitler fed us, his soldiers. They had such surplus that waste was routine. This wasn't mockery, but simple reality. We learned that a nation capable of feeding its enemies without strain has achieved true victory. A society with such resources has accomplished what the Third Reich never could, defeating scarcity itself. We returned to Germany knowing our entire worldview was built on deception. Americans had prevailed through agricultural superiority and industrial capacity. We who had marched as conquerors had been transformed by witnessing abundance beyond imagination. To America, from your former enemies, thank you for demonstrating that strength comes from creation, not destruction. You fed us when we would have starved you. That generosity and victory defines genuine power. The auditorium erupted in sustained applause. Americans and Germans together, former enemies united in recognition of transformation that had begun with simple meals in June 1943. The story of German POWs and American food demonstrates how profound change can occur through experience rather than argument. German soldiers who witnessed American agricultural capacity became living testimony to democracy's practical success. Their transformation began not with political lectures, but with daily meals, not with propaganda, but with experienced reality. Each meal challenged Nazi ideology more effectively than any formal education could have achieved. The transformation was so complete that when former POW Günter Grabe returned to Fort Lewis in 2017 at age 91, he rode a bicycle across the base with signs reading, "USA, the country and its people, you are my first and final love." It was in August 1944 when I came here for first time as prisoner of war. We always were treated with fairness, got sufficient food and 80 cents daily that gave us chance to buy cigarettes, chocolate, ice cream, and Coca-Cola, things my mother and sister in Germany could only dream of. That's why I have come here 73 years later to say, thank you, America, I will never forget it. Colonel William Percival, Joint Base Lewis McChord Deputy Garrison Commander, greeted him with these words, "You remind us that how you treat somebody defines who we are. There are times even today when we may want to forget that, and you let us know that's a lesson not to be forgotten." German POWs experienced American agricultural capacity and were profoundly changed by it. They arrived as enemies, departed as witnesses, and many returned as immigrants and friends. Their children would mature in democratic Germany, allied with the United States, a partnership built on understanding, gained through unexpected generosity. The camps themselves left minimal physical traces. Most were dismantled after war's end, buildings sold or demolished, land returned to farms or converted to other uses. But their impact endured in memories of those who experienced them and in democratic reconstruction of Germany that followed. The Marshall Plan, which would feed and rebuild Europe, extended lessons learned in POW camps. Generosity and victory creates lasting peace. Former POWs who succeeded in post-war Germany often credited their American camp experience as transformative. They had witnessed prosperity achieved through cooperation rather than conquest, different races working together productively, democratic systems producing wealth rather than chaos. These lessons absorbed through daily experience proved more powerful than any theoretical education. Dr. Arnold Kramer, the leading historian of German POWs in America, concluded America won the propaganda war not through clever messages, but through sheer reality. Every meal, every electric light, every working toilet was an argument against Nazism. The POWs were converted by prosperity they could see, touch, and taste. Numbers tell only part of the story. Yes, 371,683 German POWs were held in America. Yes, they worked 14 million man-days of agricultural labor. Yes, fewer than 1% attempted escape. But the real story lies in human transformation through the simple act of eating well while being treated with dignity. When modern historians examine post-war German democracy's success, they often point to the Marshall Plan, denazification programs, or the Soviet threat. But they sometimes overlook the 370,000 German soldiers who returned home having experienced American democracy as daily sustenance, fair treatment despite being enemies, resources shared rather than hoarded. These men became democracy's ambassadors, each one influencing family, friends, and communities with their experience. They had lived within the supposed enemy system and found it superior in every measurable way. This undeniable reality discredited Nazi ideology more effectively than any propaganda campaign. When the last German POW departed American shores in 1946, they left behind remarkable records. The lowest escape rate of any major POW population in history, the highest rate of voluntary cooperation with camp authorities, the most successful transformation of enemy combatants into future allies. All achieved not through harsh treatment or intensive propaganda, but through simple humanity and abundant food. The investment America made in feeding its prisoners through agricultural resources and logistical effort yielded immeasurable returns. Hundreds of thousands of Germans who had experienced democracy firsthand, who understood that American strength came from productive capacity rather than racial ideology, who recognized Nazi propaganda as complete fabrication. In the end, the German POW experience in America proved that true power lies in the ability to create and share abundance. The fact that America could feed its enemies better than Germany could feed its own soldiers revealed fundamental truths about competing systems that no amount of propaganda could overcome. German POWs arrived in America expecting weakness and division. Instead, they discovered agricultural and industrial capacity of unlimited scope combined with surprising humanity. They came as prisoners, but departed as witnesses to democratic achievement. In their transformation lay seeds of the Atlantic Alliance, the Marshall Plan, and rebuilt democratic Germany. They had experienced American plenty and would never forget. Their grandchildren would grow up in prosperous democratic Germany, allied with the United States, members of NATO, citizens of the European Union. All traceable in part to that moment when hungry Afrika Korps soldiers consumed their first American meal and recognized their entire worldview was based on lies. Food had influenced the war's outcome as decisively as any weapon. Meals had won hearts as completely as any battle. In that victory lay foundation for lasting peace, built not on threats, but on promise of shared prosperity. German POWs were surprised by American prison food better than Wehrmacht rations. Through that surprise came transformation. In their transformation lay hope for a world where former enemies could become friends, where democracy could triumph not through force, but through the revolutionary act of feeding everyone, even those who had come as destroyers.